A lot of people think aging is simple. You turn 60, then 65, then 70, and the body just slowly declines. But that is not what I see. Because after more than 20 years as a cardiovascular surgeon, I can tell you this. Two people can be the exact same age and be aging in completely different ways. One 72-year-old still moves well, thinks clearly, recovers quickly, lives independently. Another, at 58, is already exhausted, weaker, inflamed, losing muscle, gaining abdominal fat, and feeling older every single year. Same decade? No. Sometimes not even close. And that tells you something important. Your biological age and your calendar age are not the same thing. The birthday on your driver's license tells me how long you've been alive. It does not tell me how healthy your arteries are, how strong your muscles are, how well your metabolism is working, how much inflammation is building, or how fast your body is actually wearing down. And that difference between the age you are and the age your body is behaving is where the real story begins. Because most people do not suddenly feel old. They feel themselves changing. First, a little, then more, then all at once. Energy drops, strength slips, recovery slows, sleep becomes less restorative, weight starts settling in places it never used to. And the hardest part? A lot of people assume this is just normal, but very often, it is not just age. It is biology accelerating underneath you. And once that acceleration begins, the next 10 years can look very different. I see this pattern all the time. The 70-year-old who comes in sharp, steady, and resilient, still handling life on their own. And then the 59-year-old who looks 15 years older than they should, slower walking, more medications, less strength, more inflammation, worse blood sugar, less reserve. And when you look closely at what separates them, it usually is not luck alone. It is not just genetics. And it is very rarely one single event. It is years of underlying biology, either compounding in their favor or compounding against them. That is what this video is about. Not just why people feel older after 60, but why some people age much faster than others, and what is actually happening inside the body when that decline speeds up. Because once you understand the real drivers, everything starts making more sense. Your fatigue, your slower recovery, your loss of strength, your abdominal weight gain, your brain fog, your sense that your body does not bounce back the way it used to. These are not random complaints. They are signals. And after 60, they usually trace back to a small number of processes happening quietly in the background. So today, I want to walk you through the 3 biggest reasons the body starts aging faster, especially in midlife and beyond, and why, after 60, these changes become much harder to ignore. Now, the first thing most people notice is not wrinkles. It is not gray hair. It is not even pain. It is energy. But not ordinary tiredness. Not the kind you feel after one bad night of sleep. Not the kind that disappears after a quiet weekend. I mean a deeper kind of fatigue. The kind that starts becoming your baseline, where getting through a normal day feels heavier than it used to, where you recover more slowly from small demands, where a busy afternoon now feels like something your body keeps charging interest on. That kind of fatigue matters, because it usually means something has already changed underneath the surface. The second thing people notice is physical capacity. You feel it in ordinary moments. Carrying groceries, getting up from a low chair, climbing stairs, lifting something that used to feel easy. playing with grandchildren, and realizing your body wants out sooner than your mind does. And that matters for a reason many people underestimate. Because physical capacity is not just about strength, it is about independence, confidence, stability, how long you stay in charge of your own life. The third change, and in many ways the most important one, is something I call step-down aging. Because aging usually does not happen in one smooth line. It happens in drops. You get sick, you get injured, you go through a period of stress, you stop moving for a few weeks, you lose strength, you gain some fat. Sleep gets worse, your blood sugar gets less stable, and then you do not quite come back to where you were before. That becomes your new baseline. Then the next setback comes and it happens again. And this is where people start saying, I feel like I got old all of a sudden. But in reality, it was not all of a sudden. It was a series of biological losses that were no longer being repaired the way they used to be. That is the pattern. And once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. So the real question is not why life contains stress, illness, injury, poor sleep, or hard seasons. Those things happen to everyone. The real question is this: why does the body over 60 stop bouncing back the way it once did? Why does recovery take longer? Why does muscle come back slower? Why does energy stay lower? Why does one illness or injury leave such a deeper mark than it did 20 years ago? That is what I want to get into. Because beneath that faster aging, there are three major biological processes quietly weakening your ability to recover, repair, and stay resilient. And once you understand those three, you will understand why some people seem to age gradually, while others seem to age all at once. The first one starts at the level of your cells, and it affects almost everything: your energy, your muscle, your brain, your heart, and your recovery. It begins with something most people have heard of, but very few really understand: your mitochondria. So let's start with the first major reason people begin aging faster, especially after 60. It starts deep inside your cells, not in your joints, not in your skin, not in your willpower, in your cells. Every cell in your body, your muscles, your brain, your heart, your liver, relies on tiny structures called mitochondria. Think of them as your body's energy engines. They take the fuel you eat and turn it into usable energy, the kind your cells need to think, move, repair, recover, and stay alive. And when those engines work well, you feel it. You have more stamina, clearer thinking, better recovery, more physical reserve. But when they start declining, you feel that too. And usually not all at once. At first it feels subtle. You get tired more easily. You recover more slowly. A bad night of sleep hits harder. A busy day leaves you drained longer. Then over time, that lower energy stops feeling like an exception and starts feeling like your new normal. And that is one of the earliest signs of accelerated aging. Because what many people describe as, I just don't have the energy I used to, is often not laziness, not weakness, not a lack of motivation. It is biology. Your cells are literally producing energy less efficiently than they used to. Now here's the key point: this does happen to some degree with age. That part is real. But what most people do not realize is that this decline can be accelerated, sometimes dramatically, by how you live. So yes, mitochondria naturally become less efficient over time, but lifestyle can make that process much faster. And when that happens, you don't just feel older. You begin functioning older. This is one of the reasons two people at the same age can look so different on the inside. One person at 72 still has decent energy, steady movement, good mental sharpness, and enough reserve to bounce back after stress. Another at 61 feels wiped out constantly, recovers slowly, has brain fog, low stamina, and the sense that their body is aging faster than it should. Very often, the difference begins here, at the level of cellular energy. Now let me explain what that actually means. As mitochondria decline, two things tend to happen. First, your body often makes fewer of them. Second, the ones you still have become less efficient at doing their job. So now the same body has less energy production to work with. And that has consequences everywhere. Your muscles fatigue faster. Your recovery slows down. Your heart has less reserve. Your brain starts feeling less sharp. Your metabolism becomes less flexible. Even normal daily activity can start to feel heavier. That is why so many adults over 60 say things like, "I'm sleeping, but I still wake up tired." Or, "I used to bounce back in a day. Now it takes me a week." Or, "I don't feel sick. I just don't feel like myself." And those descriptions matter because they often point to a system that is no longer producing and using energy the way it once did. Now, here's where this gets even more important. Mitochondrial decline does not just reduce energy, it also increases damage, because the process of making energy creates byproducts. And when mitochondria become damaged, those byproducts build up. That creates something called oxidative stress. In simple terms, more wear and tear at the cellular level. And over time, that wear and tear starts damaging tissues, slowing repair, and feeding inflammation. So now you don't just have less energy, you also have more biological friction. And that matters a lot after 60, because once inflammation rises and recovery slows, the rest of the aging process starts speeding up too. This is why fatigue is never just about fatigue. Not at this age. It is often the first visible sign that the deeper machinery is under strain. Now here is the part I really want you to hear because it is good news. This process is not fixed, not completely, not permanently, but meaningfully. Mitochondria are one of the few things in aging biology that respond extremely well to the right kind of stress. And by stress, I mean movement, exercise, demand, use. When you give your body a reason to produce more energy, it adapts. Consistent aerobic exercise, walking briskly, cycling, swimming, sustained cardiovascular work signals your body to make more mitochondria. That is not motivational talk. That is physiology. Your body literally increases its energy-producing machinery in response to demand. And resistance training weights, body weight work, band training, strength work helps your existing mitochondria work more efficiently, especially inside muscle tissue, which means the same intervention that improves strength also improves cellular energy. That is why movement after 60 is not optional. It is not cosmetic. It is not just about weight. It is a direct intervention against one of the main reasons you age faster. And when people stop moving or become more sedentary, this process often speeds up. Sit too much, sleep poorly, eat mostly ultra-processed food, live under constant stress, move less every year, lose muscle, recover less. All of that creates the perfect environment for mitochondrial decline to accelerate. And once that starts, everything feels harder. Not because life changed, because your energy system did. This is one of the reasons some people feel like they aged 10 years in two. What they are experiencing is not just getting older, it is aging inside a lifestyle that is quietly attacking their cellular energy every day. Now, this leads directly to the next major driver. Because once energy declines, the body becomes more vulnerable to another shift that speeds aging even more. A shift in the chemical environment your body is operating in, your hormones. And after 60, that hormonal change can affect everything: muscle, fat storage, blood sugar, sleep, motivation, recovery, and even how old your body feels. Now let's move to the second major reason people age faster, especially after 60. And this one affects almost everything you feel day to day: your hormones. Not just one, not just a small change, but a gradual shift in the entire chemical environment your body operates in. And the reason this matters so much is because hormones control how your body functions: your energy, your muscle, your fat storage, your sleep, your mood, your recovery. When they are balanced, things work. When they shift, everything becomes harder. And here's what makes this dangerous: this doesn't feel like a single problem. It feels like a lot of small problems happening at once. You gain weight without changing much. You lose strength faster than expected. You feel less motivated to move. Your sleep becomes lighter. Your recovery slows down. Your energy becomes less stable. And most people assume this is just aging. But very often, it's a hormonal shift that is accelerating that aging. Now let's break this down simply. There are four major hormonal changes that matter most after 60. 1. Testosterone. Yes, this matters for both men and women. In men, testosterone naturally declines starting in the 30s. By the time a man reaches his late 50s or 60s, levels can be significantly lower than they were at their peak. And that matters because testosterone helps maintain muscle, support bone density, improve recovery, drive motivation and energy. When it drops, muscle becomes harder to maintain. Fat accumulates more easily. Recovery slows down. Energy and drive decrease. In women, testosterone also plays a role, but the bigger shift comes from something else. 2. Estrogen decline, menopause, and beyond. For women, this is one of the most significant biological transitions in life. Estrogen has protective effects on multiple systems: the heart, the brain, the bones, metabolism. When estrogen declines, especially after menopause, changes can feel sudden. Body fat redistributes toward the abdomen. Sleep becomes more disrupted. Energy fluctuates, mood changes, metabolism slows, and importantly, cardiovascular risk increases. That is why heart disease risk in women rises significantly after menopause. 3. Insulin resistance, the silent accelerator. Now, this one is extremely important and very often overlooked. As we age, our cells become less sensitive to insulin, which means your body has to produce more insulin to keep blood sugar stable. And here's the key problem: your blood sugar can still look normal. Your doctor may say, "You're fine." But underneath, insulin is rising. And that matters because elevated insulin promotes fat storage, especially around the abdomen, increases inflammation, damages blood vessels, disrupts energy stability. This is one of the biggest reasons people over 60 gain belly fat, feel energy crashes, struggle with weight, develop metabolic issues, and unless insulin is tested, it often goes unnoticed. 4. Cortisol, the stress hormone no one talks about enough. Cortisol is not bad. You need it. It helps you wake up, respond, function. But chronic stress, especially in midlife and beyond, can keep cortisol elevated for too long. And when that happens, the effects are very specific. It breaks down muscle, making you weaker over time. It promotes visceral fat, the dangerous fat around organs. It raises blood pressure. It disrupts sleep. It slows recovery. So now you have a situation where you're losing muscle, gaining fat, sleeping worse, recovering slower, feeling more tired, and all of it feeds back into itself. That's the key. These hormones don't act alone. They interact. Lower testosterone leads to less muscle. Less muscle leads to worse insulin sensitivity, Worse insulin sensitivity leads to more fat. More fat leads to more inflammation. More inflammation leads to worse hormonal balance. And the cycle continues, faster. This is why some people feel like they are aging much faster after 60. Because their hormonal environment has shifted in a way that makes everything harder. Not impossible, but harder. Now here's the part that gives you control. You cannot stop aging. You cannot completely stop these hormonal changes, but you can influence how severe they become. And this is where most people get it wrong. They focus on minor fixes, supplements, quick diets, short-term changes. But the strongest intervention by far is something much simpler. Resistance training, lifting weights, using your body weight, applying load to your muscles. Because this directly improves insulin sensitivity, supports healthy testosterone levels, reduces the impact of cortisol, helps preserve muscle mass. And muscle, as we'll talk about next, is not just strength. It is one of the most powerful anti-aging systems in your entire body. Now here's the transition I want you to understand. When hormones shift and energy declines, there is one system that gets hit the hardest. And once that system starts declining, everything else accelerates. Your metabolism worsens, your strength drops, your balance declines, your risk of disease increases. That system is your muscle. Now we come to the third reason people age faster, and in many ways, this is the most important one. Because once this starts declining, everything else speeds up. Your muscle. Most people think muscle is about strength, or appearance, or how you feel in the gym. But that is not what muscle really is. Muscle is not just tissue. It is an organ, and it plays a central role in how your entire body functions, especially after 60. Let me explain why. Your muscle is the largest place your body uses and stores glucose. In simple terms, it helps control your blood sugar. When you have enough muscle, your body handles carbohydrates efficiently. Your insulin works better. Your energy stays more stable. But when you lose muscle, everything becomes harder. Blood sugar rises more easily. Insulin resistance increases. Fat accumulates faster, especially around your abdomen. And now, you're not just losing strength. You're changing your entire metabolic environment. But that's only part of it. Muscle also produces powerful chemical signals called myokines. These are substances released when your muscles contract when you walk, lift, move, exercise. And these signals affect your entire body. They help reduce inflammation, support heart health, improve brain function, protect metabolism. Some even cross into the brain and support memory and cognitive function. So when your muscles are active, you are not just moving your body. You are sending protective signals to almost every system you have. Now here's the problem. After 60, muscle loss accelerates. There is a clinical term for this, sarcopenia. And it doesn't happen suddenly. It starts earlier in life, often in your 30s, but becomes much more noticeable after 50 and beyond. Without intervention, people can lose a significant percentage of muscle mass each decade. And by the time someone reaches their 70s, that loss can directly affect their independence. Getting up from a chair, climbing stairs, catching themselves from a fall, carrying everyday objects. But the real damage starts long before that, because muscle loss feeds directly into everything we talked about earlier. Less muscle leads to worse insulin control. Worse insulin control leads to more fat gain. More fat leads to more inflammation. More inflammation leads to slower recovery. Slower recovery leads to more decline. And the cycle continues, faster each year. Now combine that with what we already covered. Declining mitochondria, lower energy, hormonal shifts, more fat, less muscle, slower recovery. And now muscle loss sits right in the center of it all. being attacked from multiple directions. That's why this matters so much, because muscle is not optional after 60. It is your reserve system. It's what allows you to recover from illness, bounce back from injury, maintain independence, stay stable, stay capable, stay alive longer with quality. Now, here's something most people don't realize. Muscle is one of the few systems you can actively rebuild even later in life. Not perfectly, not like when you were 25, but meaningfully. Studies consistently show people in their 60s, 70s, even 80s can increase strength and improve muscle function with the right training. And when that happens, everything improves. Blood sugar stabilizes, inflammation decreases, balance improves, falls reduce, energy increases, confidence returns, and even brain health benefits. Because remember, movement signals don't just stay in your muscles, they travel. Now, here's where many people go wrong. They rely only on light activity. Walking, occasional movement, general activity. That's good. But it's not enough, because to maintain muscle, you need resistance. Your body needs a reason to keep that tissue. If you don't challenge it, you lose it. And that loss is one of the fastest ways aging accelerates after 60. Now step back and look at what we've covered so far. Three major drivers: mitochondrial decline, lower energy; hormonal shifts, changed metabolism, recovery, fat, storage; muscle loss, loss of strength, metabolic control, protection. But there is one more force that ties all of these together, one that quietly makes each of them worse. And most people don't even realize it's happening, because you don't feel it directly. You don't see it, but it is there in the background, driving the entire process forward. That force is chronic inflammation. Now we come to something most people have heard of, but almost nobody fully understands: inflammation. And not the kind you can see. Not a swollen knee, not a sore joint, not a visible injury. I'm talking about something much quieter: chronic, low-grade inflammation. The kind that sits in your body day after day, year after year, without obvious symptoms. And after 60, this becomes one of the most powerful drivers of accelerated aging, because it affects everything: your arteries, your brain, your muscles, your metabolism, your recovery. And the most dangerous part? You usually don't feel it happening. Now let's make this simple. Your body uses inflammation as a defense system. Short-term inflammation is good. It helps you heal, fight infection, recover from injury. But when inflammation never fully turns off, it stops being protective and starts becoming destructive. Instead of helping repair your body, it begins to slowly damage it. Now here's what that looks like after 60. Recovery slows down. You exercise but stay sore longer. You get sick, and it takes more time to feel normal again. You deal with small injuries, and they linger. That is not just age. That is inflammation interfering with repair. Now let's go deeper. Chronic inflammation does something very specific. It damages the inner lining of your blood vessels, and once that lining is damaged, plaque forms more easily, which means inflammation directly contributes to heart disease. But it doesn't stop there. It also worsens insulin resistance, which means your blood sugar becomes harder to control. It accelerates muscle loss, making you weaker over time, and it even affects your brain. Chronic inflammation has been linked to memory decline, slower thinking, increased risk of dementia. So now one process is affecting multiple systems at once. That's why it's so dangerous. Now here's the question that matters most. What causes it? Because the answer is not complicated. In fact, it's surprisingly familiar. 1. Visceral fat. The fat around your organs, not the fat you can see, is biologically active. It releases inflammatory signals into your bloodstream every single day. The more visceral fat you carry, the higher your baseline inflammation. 2. Ultra-processed food. Highly refined foods high in sugar, additives, and low-quality ingredients drive inflammation through multiple pathways. They disrupt metabolism. They spike blood sugar. They affect your gut health. And over time, they keep your body in a constant low-level inflammatory state. 3. Poor sleep. Even 1 or 2 nights of poor sleep can raise inflammatory markers. Now imagine what happens when poor sleep becomes chronic. 4. Chronic stress. Stress hormones don't just affect your mind. They activate inflammatory pathways throughout your body. And after 60, many people are dealing with financial pressure, health concerns, family responsibilities, loss of routine, all of which can keep stress elevated. 5. Alcohol. Often underestimated. This is one many people overlook. Regular alcohol intake, even at moderate levels, can increase inflammation, disrupt sleep, affect metabolism, impact liver function, and over time it compounds the problem. Now here's where this becomes critical. All the drivers we talked about earlier, low energy, hormonal imbalance, muscle loss, they are all made worse by inflammation, and inflammation itself is made worse by them. So now you have a loop. Energy declines, leads to inflammation rises. Inflammation rises, leads to hormones worsen. Hormones worsen, leads to muscle declines. Muscle declines, leads to metabolism worsens. Metabolism worsens, leads to more inflammation, and the cycle continues, faster each year. This is what researchers refer to as accelerated biological aging. Not just getting older, but aging faster than you should be. Now here's the key idea I want you to take from this. There is a threshold. Your body can handle a certain level of stress and inflammation. But once it crosses a point, decline, accelerates across multiple systems at once. That's when people start saying, I feel like everything changed in just a few years. And they're right. Because biologically, something did change. Now here's the good news. Unlike genetics, this is something you can influence, not perfectly, but powerfully. And when you reduce inflammation, everything improves. Energy stabilizes, recovery improves, muscle becomes easier to maintain, hormones become more balanced, brain function becomes sharper. That's the impact of lowering the background load your body is carrying every day. Now step back and look at the full picture. We've covered mitochondria, energy production, hormones, chemical environment, muscle, structural and metabolic strength, inflammation, the invisible accelerator. But here's what matters most. These are not separate problems. They are connected. They amplify each other. And once they start feeding into each other, aging can accelerate very quickly. But the opposite is also true. If you improve one, you begin improving all. Which brings us to the most important part of this entire video. Because once you understand what's driving faster, aging, the next question is, what actually slows it down? So now you understand something most people never fully see. Aging is not just time. It is a process, driven by loss of cellular energy, hormonal shifts, muscle decline, chronic inflammation. And when those begin feeding into each other, aging accelerates. But here's the part that changes everything. That process can be slowed, not stopped, not reversed completely, but slowed in a way that meaningfully changes how you feel, function, and live after 60. And the strategy is not complicated, but it does require consistency. 1. Protect and rebuild muscle. This is your foundation. If there is one thing that determines how well you age, it's this, your muscle. Because muscle supports metabolism, blood sugar control, balance, strength recovery, brain signaling inflammation control. After 60, this becomes your reserve system. and without it, everything declines faster. So what matters? Resistance training, at least 2 to 3 times per week. Not extreme, not exhausting, but consistent and progressive. Because your body needs a reason to keep muscle, and when you build it, you don't just get stronger. You improve. Insulin sensitivity, hormonal balance, inflammation levels, brain function. That is how powerful this one habit is. 2. Move daily, not just exercise. Exercise is important, but what matters just as much is how much you move throughout the day. Walking, standing, climbing stairs, staying active. Because modern life removes movement, and when movement disappears, aging accelerates, even in people who work out. So don't just rely on a gym session. Protect your daily movement. 3. Eat to reduce inflammation, not just calories. This is where many people go wrong. They focus on calories, restrictions, short-term diets. But the real issue, especially after 60, is inflammation. So the goal is simple. More whole foods, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, quality protein, healthy fats, less ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, highly packaged meals. Not perfection, but consistency. Because what you eat daily either increases inflammation or reduces it. 4. Prioritize protein more than you think. As you age, your body becomes less responsive to protein. This is called anabolic resistance, which means you need more protein to maintain muscle than you did when you were younger. And it matters how you eat it. Not all at once. Spread across meals, because your body can only use so much at a time for muscle repair. This is one of the simplest ways to slow muscle loss, and most people aren't doing it. 5. Protect your sleep. This is not optional. Sleep is not rest, it is repair. During sleep, hormones reset, muscle repairs. Inflammation decreases, brain clears waste, metabolism stabilizes, and after 60, sleep often becomes lighter and more disrupted, which means you have to protect it intentionally. Because poor sleep accelerates every process we've talked about. 6. Manage stress like it matters, because it does. Chronic stress raises cortisol, and cortisol breaks down muscle, increases fat storage, raises blood pressure, worsens sleep, slows recovery. So stress is not just emotional, it is biological, and managing it is part of protecting your body. 7. Stay engaged. This is more important than people think. Purpose, routine, social connection. These are not soft ideas. They have measurable effects on your biology. Lower inflammation, better hormonal balance, improved brain function, better long-term outcomes. People who stay engaged tend to age better, not by accident, but because their bodies stay active on multiple levels. Now let's bring this together. Most people think aging is something that happens to them, but in reality, it is something that is happening inside them, every day. And those daily inputs, movement, food, sleep, stress, muscle engagement, either push the system toward decline or toward stability. Here's the one message I want you to remember. Aging is inevitable. Rapid decline is not. You cannot stop time, but you can protect your baseline. So when life knocks you down, you recover faster. You don't lose as much. You don't drop as far. And over time, that makes the difference between independence and dependence, strength and frailty, clarity and decline living. And just getting by. This is not about perfection. It's about direction. Because the same way aging compounds, so does prevention. Small actions, repeated consistently, over months, over years, leading to a completely different outcome. If you've stayed with me this far, you already understand more than most people. And that matters, because awareness is where change begins. I'm Dr. Olivia Kesson. Stay consistent, protect your body, and I'll see you in the next video.